Hi, everybody. We are the George Washington University chapter of SHIP, and today we are here to talk to you about fundraising and how we do it at our chapter. Hopefully, we can provide some useful insight for you and give you some tips on how to maximize funding for your personal chapter.
Yeah, so first we'd like to introduce ourselves. So, hi everyone, my name is Luis Moyers, and I'm a rising senior studying mechanical and aerospace engineering, and am the current SHIP GW chapter president. This summer, I am doing research at the Thermal Fluids Lab here at GW, mainly focused on assisting the design and building of some of our new research facilities.
Hi, everybody. My name is Olivia Landrosina. I am the current internal vice president for our chapter. That means I deal with the marketing and events team, and I help out with any fundraising internal to GW. I'm currently interning at Northrop Grumman. I am majoring in electrical engineering. I'm a rising senior as well. So I work in the power electronics department, mainly focusing on making test automations for various power electronic components.
And hi, my name is Jairo Sanchez. I was the previous chapter president before Luis, and I just graduated with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering this past spring. And I'm going to continue at GW by being a master's student where I'm concentrating on fluids, thermal sciences, and energy. And currently this summer, I'm doing research here at the LeBlanc lab where we focus on additive manufacturing and thermoelectrics.
So first, we want to talk a little bit about our SHIP GW story. We started shortly before the pandemic, and we struggled, obviously, coming back from the pandemic, getting a good amount of members and having more engagement in our chapter. So in the 2022 to 2023 year, we only had 2 returning e-board members leading up to elections in 2023. But for the following school year, we were able to have 7 e-board members. As you can see in the lower left-hand corner, there is one person missing. That would be myself. I was on the e-board, not present for the photo, not sure where I was. But a very fun fact about that is of those 7 members in the 2023 to 2024 school year, 6 of us ended up coming back and being either vice president or president in a future year. So that really shows how happy we are to be engaged in our chapter. And then the following 2 years, you can see our e-board grew to 14 members, and we continued having elections, and we were able to grow our chapter to go from just having like 1 marketing representative to a team of social media representatives. So we're more than a student org, we're family, and we're very excited to keep growing. So we want to talk a little bit about your chapter and your story, how you represent yourselves and what you are as a group. So we want to talk about assessing your chapter. Before you can think, what do you need for fundraising? You need to think about how other people view your chapter. Do they know about you? Do they know what you do? Do they know what SHIP represents? So one way you can assess your chapter is to search it online. Google it, check out your social media on your school's events pages. What do people know about your SHIP chapter? Do they know what SHIP is? If they looked at your pages, would they understand what events you put on? Would they be excited to attend your events? Does your chapter put on a face that somebody would want to join? So you can review your current funding sources and see if you're making the most of those resources. How much money are you getting? How much do you have? What are you putting it towards? And are you proving that you're putting your funding towards something of good use? Especially for smaller chapters, you're probably relying heavily on funding from your school, so don't undersell yourselves. We have some pictures below of some of the events we've put on, and we do utilize the funding from our school, so we hope to talk more about that later. Talking a little bit more about what your story is, you want to put a face to your message. Share your chapter's journey, impact, and personality through photos and stories. We have some great fun events and social events and trips that we have pictures of down below. Every chapter is going to have a different, unique, meaningful story, so you want to document it to connect with sponsors. People are willing to give funding to a chapter that they know is going to put it to good use, a chapter that looks like they're doing productive things and they're happy to be together. Chapters of all sizes bring different values. Smaller chapters tend to be more close-knit, and bigger chapters tend to have more outreach and can work a little bit more in different areas, so play to your different strengths. So here are some examples of ways that you can assess your chapter. or ways that you can expand your network and show other people what your SHIP chapter is all about. So on the left, those top and bottom pictures, that is our GW Engage page. That is how our school shows all of their student orgs and their events. Your school likely has something similar. Here we like to keep gallery photos of all of our events and projects that we have going on, not only for the students to see what we're all about and see some fun things they might want to attend, but this is really good for our school to keep track of where their funding is going. We like to put all of the photos in our gallery so they know, oh, they did 8 events this semester. Like they're putting our money to good use and we want to give them more next semester. At the top there, we have our LinkedIn page. The LinkedIn is a really great way to showcase your organization to professional engineering orgs and companies. They often use LinkedIn, and that's a great way to reach out and potentially secure some sponsors. You can message people on LinkedIn, you can post on your chapter's LinkedIn, and you can even tag your members to boost their personal LinkedIn pages. Below that, we have our chapter TikTok account. And honestly, we mainly use this for fun videos, dancing videos, funny skits at e-board meetings, just something to show that we're all friends and this is an org that you might want to hang out with. On the right there, we have our Instagram. This is our most active social media page. Here we like to post recaps of great events we've had. We just posted a recap of our past semester, so go check it out. We like to post flyers so people can see our events and when they're coming up. We do polls on the story to engage with our audience. What kind of events do you guys want to see? And we also importantly reach out to other GW or other SHIP orgs on the East Coast to plan events with them and communicate with them. We have an annual picnic with a lot of the SHIP orgs on the East Coast, and we planned that with UMD last semester. So feel free to give us a follow the other SHIP orgs near you, and we could potentially help out with some combined events.
So now we want to look at something we all have access to, the chapter management tool or the CMT, because it's a really helpful tool to use. So like, as Olivia mentioned before, when assessing your online chapter identity and telling your chapter story, you can extract different aspects of the CMT to do this. And so as you see, so like if you must set out your chapter identity, you could use the SMART goals part of the CMT to do this. So for us, because here you write what you want to achieve for the following school years. And so for us, it'd be having a certain amount of PD events. So like that'd be with SHIP DC, other SHIP chapters in the local area, having events with sponsors, going to convention, anything else like that. And then also something we always want to highlight is like we want to build familia through our social events and celebrating Hispanic culture, which makes up a big part of our chapter identity. And also, you could tell your chapter story using the CMT. So in parts 1 and 3 of the chapter schedule, there you have all your events listed out along with descriptions and like the outcomes of the events, because events are usually the bread and butter of chapters. So by filling this out, you have your individual goals and outcomes of each individual event. And from there, you can see the bigger picture and build your chapter's broader story by combining all of those descriptions and outcomes. And if collabs, for example, if collabs are a big part of your chapter's story, you can mention that here. Okay, we collab with our local NESB chapter, ASME, IEEE, et cetera, et cetera. And so for our next slide, you could also use the CMT as a starting point for organizing your finances if you look at part 2 of the chapter schedule, because there you have all your basic finance info, so where you describe the cost of each individual event. And so while it may not encapsulate everything, it's a great point of reference to build upon and to show where your money is roughly going. And so when looking at organizing our finances in the next slide, so once you do extract all that information from your CMT, you want to flesh it out. You want to add in your funding sources. You also want to make sure you label and categorize everything so you could see the bigger picture of where your money comes from and where it goes. So for example, like going to convention, going to how much money goes to a certain semester, et cetera, et cetera. And then from here, you can use this as a foundation for everything further on we explained in this presentation. And you also want to self-evaluate. If you have all this information, you could see, okay, how much funding do we actually need? Are we spending our money wisely? And are we maximizing our current funding sources before looking elsewhere. So maybe there's something you're overlooking in your current funding sources where you could do something differently or do something better to get more funding from, let's say, your school, from a grant, from anything else. And then looking at our example. So something we do is we have a finance spreadsheet where we categorize everything by all of our finances by semester, by expense type, and having some additional notes. And also we have convention in its own category because we know how expensive going to convention is with registration, with flights, with hotels, and any other expenses. Because you want to have a general idea of how much money you actually need for a convention or anything else before prices become available. And so you can plan earlier because you want to know, okay, we plan to expend X amount of money. And you also want to make sure to add a bit of cushion so you have a bit more money than you actually need. And also, you can write down notes. So for example, if you have a affordable catering option, you could write that down. Okay, we like this vendor because it's affordable and for the amount of food we get and for the taste of the food. So you can let future e-boards know to go back to the same vendor. Or you could also write down, hey, we had a bad experience with this vendor because of X, Y, and Z, so we know to avoid this for the future. And also, I want to make sure to document everything because it's important and it helps further down the line.
So our next session is called Relationship to Resources. This is just about, building your relationships and seeing how they can bring you some funding. So first, it's important to keep in mind that there isn't just one way to raise funding for your chapter. There are so many ways to fund your chapter's expenses, and we decided to stick to the three most common and the ones we depend on the most. So we define these as traditional fundraising, school funding, and corporate sponsorships. So you likely already know what each of them means and entails, but just in case you need a refresher or there's a chapter out there that's new to this, we thought we'd spend some time going over them. So first and easiest, we consider traditional funding to be anything from a bake sale to some sort of crowdfunding event or a friend, family, or alumni donation. Next, you have department funding, and that's some type of funding that comes from your school, either through some yearly or semesterly budget process or initiative. And lastly, corporate funding, which includes any financial support from a business, organization, or company. And so before we go further into these funding mediums, I just want to emphasize how important the CMT can be for all of this, which is what Heido has just spent some time going over. But let's go into traditional fundraising events. So again, traditional funding is probably the one that you're most familiar with, as if you're part of any sort of, Boy, Girl Scout organization, maybe team or club before college, this is likely what you were doing. And I mean, this is a very broad funding method, and while it can be some sort of donation link on your website or partnering with a business to receive some other profit, you can see some of our examples in the bottom right. It can also, some like other ideas we've seen from Hispanic organizations have been stands with aguas frescas, tacos, or even pan dulce. And you can see we also have a small list of pros and cons to consider. So in our experience, this method of fundraising hasn't always been the most profitable. However, we have always made money from it. And, a great plus is that it can help bring awareness to your SHIP chapter at your school.
So building on from that and looking at school department funding, this is funding you'd receive through the SGA, school grants, specific departments, whether that's engineering school or anything else. It's usually a more reliable source of funding because you can expect a certain amount every single year. And so you want to make sure you know what to do to ensure that you always get the same amount every single year, or to know any tips and tricks to maximize this funding. And usually there's some sort of staff or faculty at your school whose job is to help with this. So make sure you know who that is, build a relationship with them and get to know them. And so once they do know you, this establishes your org better and it establishes familiarity within your school. So for us personally, something we did, as you see on the right, we made a presentation to the dean of the engineering school about our story, about our finances, our goals, and our outcomes for convention specifically. Because we felt we wanted to justify ourselves and to show the importance of convention to us and the value it brings to us compared to the amount of funding that they allocated to us compared to other student organizations. And so once we did present that to them, it was very well received. And now it's something that they encourage others engineering orgs within the school to do based on the presentation we initially did. So that was cool to see. And looking at corporate sponsors, this is generally what chapters think of when fundraising, because to define it, a corporate sponsor is a one-time or recurring financial support from a company in exchange for promo, member info, for specific events, etc., etc. So something you could do is to start small. Invite a company to a single event, get to know each other. This is low risk, and from there you can build on. And then once you do establish that relationship, once you do establish that sponsor, remember it's a two-way relationship, because how they provide you value in funding, you provide them value in terms of like visibility, member information, whether that's resumes, member resumes, or member contact info, and you also provide them a connection with the broader community within your school. So make sure to document everything. Make sure to take pictures so you could show corporate sponsors, okay, this is what we actually do. And also you want to make sure to pitch your strengths. So like we said before, like if you're a small chapter, you can emphasize smaller, close-knit connections with more members. And if you're bigger, if you're a bigger chapter, you have a bigger reach. So it's up to you to figure out what those individual strengths are. And now looking at pitching your chapter. So like this would be something like we did with the dean of our engineering school. So if you follow all the previous tips on the CMT and everything else we talked about before, you should already have a clear story. You should already have SMART goals. You should already have known what your finances are. You should have your identity. You should have your story. So now you just have to prepare everything to showcase in a presentation to show your chapter in the best light possible. So make sure to tailor this as best you can to whoever you're presenting to in a similar way you do with a resume. So pitch your unique strengths, both big and small chapters, and also do this to showcase the impact of your chapter and to justify why you're even asking for money in the first place. So if you have this chapter pitch, this also helps other areas, because if you have a culture of documenting everything, this eases the burden later on during the school year and for future e-boards, because everything should be prepared and you should know everything ahead of time. And this helps with planning too, because everything is easier if you have things done earlier. And hopefully this means that whenever you do buy stuff for like convention, for like flights, hotels, registration, it should be cheaper and helps you to save money, because we know every saving counts. And now we want to look at preparing a sponsorship package. So if you've done everything we mentioned before, again, the majority of your work is already done. So you just had to package everything and to actually showcase it so you could send it to potential sponsors and companies. So it's a similar format as what we've been talking about up until now. You want to have a section for your chapter's mission / story. You want to showcase the impact of your chapter. You want to showcase the value of your chapter. And then once you have that all set, you want to list out the need of funding you have, and you want to showcase how a company can support that. So that could be through having different sponsor tiers, so whether that's bronze, silver, gold, each with their own benefits, slowly scaling up for the amount of money you get in return. You could have individual sponsored events. You could have some general advice for companies on how they can get involved in your chapter beyond just funding. And on the right, you see the cover of our sponsorship package, and you could use this for inspiration, and you can access it through a QR code we have at the end of this presentation that goes to our link tree, and then you can access this sponsorship package.
So now that we've talked about how your relationships can bring you funding, we want to emphasize the importance of maintaining these relationships. So yeah, we want to talk about the importance of maintaining these relationships, especially through transitions. So yeah, once a relationship is established, you really, really, really want to maintain it, especially upon transitions, constantly changing e-boards. You want to make sure that everyone that is incoming into your e-board, the freshmen, the sophomores, or people coming into new roles are being presented to your sponsors, to your deans of your department. And so also providing this information is important because transparency builds trust from corporate sponsors. So once you introduce them to new students, you're just continuing to nurture that relationship. So this will also just help your future e-boards with planning and transition, because you might not have the opportunity to go over it once you're, graduated. And so another thing we want to talk about that helps nurture these relationships is small acts of gratitude. This can be anything from just like a small thank you to like a, hey, this is what we did this semester with your funding. Um, and they really, really care to see what you do. So just to continue up on this. So yeah, you want to keep your sponsors updated on your chapter's progress. And as Olivia mentioned, this can be posting on LinkedIn for them to see. You can be sending periodic emails with your updates or setting up monthly meetings. So just make sure you're communicating all the amazing things you've done and let them know that the funds are being put to good use. One of our favorite ways to be involved with our sponsor is by going on facility tours. So in the image on the bottom right, you can see an event we held at the end of last semester where we toured Baltimore Air Code Company. They're our main sponsor, and we got to see our sponsors in person. This was an amazing opportunity where we invited two other DW engineering orgs. So we invited IEEE and ASME, and we also reconnected with two professional ship members that we've met in previous tours at their facilities. So yeah, you want to make sure that you're also keeping in contact with alumni, as that's another great way to expand your network and maintain relationships. When people graduate, make sure you keep track of where they go and their personal contact info. We've had, a lot of successful panels and in-person events with our graduate members, and this is a great way to get connected with professional engineering companies and just already have someone working there. So lastly, this will go over some of the things we've already mentioned, but we really want to emphasize the importance of justifying your budget. So we've briefed through most of this, but this goes hand in hand with maintaining your relationships. So just really, really do a good job of keeping track of where your money goes. And this is important for many reasons. Just to mention some of the ones that have already been said. It's important for chapter transitioning because it can help guide an incoming e-board and give them an idea of how much everything should be. And it's also important for event budgets, semester planning. It's important because if you keep track of your money diligently, it becomes very easy to justify your need for this money and also show its impact. As you can see in the screenshots below and on the screen, this is something we have taken very seriously in past semesters, and we hope to continue doing going forward. So yeah, I mentioned a little bit of our sponsor BAC, but I mean, it doesn't have to be that scary of a thing to just get connected with a sponsor. We met BAC at Leadership Live in DC, and I mean, just one of our members, he graduated now. I believe the story goes, he just went up to them, asked them if, what they did, and if they'd be interested in sponsoring us. And from there, that we just connected with them. We had a career day, a site tour at their facilities last year. We did it again this year, and they've been our sponsor. They've helped us through some of our PD events at TW, and it's a very, very it's very helpful to see that there are other people doing this because we've met some of their ship members there, and it's pretty inspirational to see what they do, and they always want to help us. So yeah, you can see the pictures on the right. That's a side tour we did this year, and yeah, that pretty much sums it all up for fundraising. Um, as Haido mentioned, that's our Linktree QR code. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions or if you're looking for some more advice. We also have our sponsorship package on there and our social media. And we thank you for listening and hope you enjoy the rest of CCLP. Thank you.